Hi, great. So we're back. This time we're going to look at weight and gravity. Last time we started with sort of small stillnesses, slowness, whereas now we're starting to look at sort of weight and gravity. And already those weight and gravity is involved, right? You know, if you want to move across space, if you want to walk across the room or move across the room, roll across the room, you are having to move your center of gravity off that static place and into motion, into movement. And so there's this play always with that relationship with gravity and where that center of mass is, where that center of your weight is. And even in the stillness, and especially towards the end, we started to play with Steve Paxton's small dances, right? I mentioned it at the end, and there you're negotiating that place of balance and starting to understand that maybe you're always falling and catching around that center of gravity in order to stay standing. And of course, if you're sitting leaning back, your center of gravity is more supported, or if you're lying down and there's less of a place for that center of weight to sort of move off and start motion. However, you can do this sort of sitting in a chair as well. You can sit up and feel how there are muscles sort of always trying to either hold the weight off of the sort of center place or find a place of balance. So we're going to play with that today. It's going to be a little bit more guided, the session, or the way I'm introducing different elements, but we're going to focus on this gravity, this weight that is somehow already built into dance. So let's just arrive, take a moment to feel where we are. We can close our eyes if we want and can keep them open, and just choose at any point if you want to have your eyes open or closed. I don't know where you are, so I trust you to take care of that. And just breathe and feel the ground, feel the surfaces under you, and feel where your weight is inside there. Maybe it's circling. Maybe there are different weights on different parts of the surfaces. And see what muscles are holding, which muscles engage as the weight moves. And we can feel right up to the top of us, where our weight sort of accumulates, and see how it sort of has an echoing sort of negotiation between all the joints, all the different parts that all sort of balance on top of each other to find a balancing point. And feel how that weight shifts around our base, around our bottom surface, right to the edge perhaps, where we start to have to engage muscles on the opposite side to the direction we're going. And then coming back to the center, moving away to the other side. And just starting to explore the edge, how far we can go before we have to catch ourselves maybe. And sort of rolling, moving around. Okay, and we can come back to the middle now and just rest. Now we've sort of explored a little bit what's here and see how we can balance and follow those little dances. Feel the muscles releasing and holding, catching and letting go. Try and become aware of more of what is balancing you. Perhaps consider parts that you don't feel are involved or you wouldn't imagine are involved. And just see if you relax them or if you tighten them, if that affects your balance and how your weight is being managed in relationship to gravity. And we just feel that little dance, those adjustments. Great. So now I'd like you to open your eyes, come back. Now I'd like you to find somewhere where you feel comfortable with perhaps falling or being able to take a step or walk or catch yourself, roll and catch yourself. And once you've found that place where you have the freedom to do that, I'd like you to sort of start to let go of that balance and fall and catch yourself. So fall and catch yourself. Either you can catch yourself with your foot by walking, or you can roll and catch yourself with your hands. And then you'll notice you'll then find or allow that momentum to find a balance again and fall and catch yourself. Fall and catch yourself. Fall and catch yourself. Great. So I just want you to continue with that, walking, rolling, catching in any direction, just playing with how weight is moving and shifting. Perhaps you can go upside down, dropping the head, perhaps letting the tail to swing. I'm just going to play with this falling and catching, walking and rolling. And I'm going to invite you to pause here so that you can have the chance to explore this further. Go for a long walk, run, falling and catching. So, pause now. Okay, great. Hopefully you've had a moment to play with walking around, feeling your weight, catching it, and just in general, rolling, maybe feeling what happens when you play with this weight and gravity. So many dance genres and practices really start with weight, and you can imagine, since it's such a central initiation point, and you think of flow and gravity and center of weight and balance are so central in sort of what you could imagine constitutes dance. And maybe this isn't specifically your interest, but it's a good way of trying to engage with how you are working with that, if you are working with it. So now I'd like us to look at sort of when we resist and don't resist. So yielding, letting go with weight, and where we can stop and catch ourselves. A little bit more concrete. So really falling forward, and how do we stop ourselves, and how do we lift, and then allowing ourselves to just move and roll and keep flowing, keep moving, keep running, keep allowing that center of mass to keep moving us. And eventually perhaps we turn this into a little bit of what Steve Paxton and Nancy Stark Smith sort of created into contact impro. In here, we are starting to allow our contact with the ground, first and foremost, especially with the small dances, into a conversation of sharing that weight, sharing that center of gravity. And we can roll into and onto objects, onto the floor, and we can roll and continue to follow that center of weight and that gravity. We can push and lean onto objects, furniture, the walls, and use that movement of and that center of weight to sort of support and guide even the direction, the flow of movement. And we can then even incorporate that into meeting with someone else, with another body or many bodies. We can roll and lean against, we can share weight, make a counterbalance, pushing against. Perhaps we could do sort of a standing up work, which is very common, where we use that center of gravity to stand up and to sit down again, go to the floor and sit up by pushing against each other, sharing weight, and rolling on that point of contact. So using rolling and sliding with the contact that we have with each other, with the floor, the wall, the furniture, as a point of contact that can distribute and shift that shared center of gravity. So there's a lot in there, and I want to encourage you to explore now how how weight and your center of gravity can be assisted by other things, how we can let it flow and roll, how we can fall and catch, but also how that shared weight can then start to be articulated in these different exercises that are articulated in contact impro. With others, alone, for ourselves, however we wish. So that's a bit of a sketch of what I'd like you to do now. take a moment and sort of go deeper with these concepts of gravity and weight, sharing with the furniture, sharing with the environment that you're in, and allowing it to navigate or direct even where you move next. So pause now and have a go. Great. So perhaps you're already doing it. You're playing with levels, like being high, in a squat, kneeling, sitting, lying, the different levels that you can play with. Or even you're playing with throwing, allowing weight to escape and have dynamic shifts and change into a fast roll or into a run, or maybe even, we can start jumping, throwing and rolling. You can see how gravity and weight can expand into this huge space. And in fact, even into sort of techniques like release technique, sort of developed in the 1970s with the influences of the likes of Trisha Brown, Joan Skinner, and many others, where you're looking for like focus on efficiency, minimalism, minimizing unnecessary muscular effort, using gravity rather than fighting with it. So falling and yielding and releasing. And you see a sort of huge sort of amount of possibilities sort of open up in that space. So I'd like to invite another pause here so that you can maybe start to dance a little bit more freely, experimenting with dynamic shifts of level whilst playing with this space. There are more intricate practices, sort of floor techniques and things that sort of have their origins or maybe have influence from release technique. I mean, even capoeira, where sort of Steve Paxton started, there's this sort of rolling and using momentum and things. There is so many complex technical devices you can apply. But for now, I'd like you just to explore and refine maybe what are the qualities and things that are interesting. Because later on, we can start to go off and take a class or watch someone else's practice and then hone and develop a skill or a technique or a certain step. But so long as we aren't invested and investigating the way in which those things are interesting and important for what we want to do in our dancing, we run the risk of not having full control over them and not having full sense of understanding of them and knowledge. We run the risk of doing things just because it seems like that's the right way to do things for a certain technique, rather than actually interrogating why am I wanting to do this and for what reason and what's it bringing me, how does it play a role. So go explore, be free, but just in the back of your mind start to note what are the things that are bringing you joy, fun. I mean, you could even find yourself doing things that are almost parkour, sort of stunt-like activities this space is so large and so big and can be so rewarding. So I just want us to have that little play space for a minute. Right, so pause here and then we'll come back and we'll close the session. Okay, great. Hopefully that was a fun just release. Now, I want us to look at one single type of way of using weight or thinking about weight. So this I'm borrowing from BMC. I am not a practitioner. I don't know how to teach this properly, but I want to lend my experience, what I have learned, what I have felt from doing these practices, from body-mind centering. That's what BMC stands for. And this is a somatic technique, and there are many things that sort of fall in that category, and a lot of them work with weight as well, like Alexander technique, Feldenkrais method, or authentic movement, maybe developed by Mary Stark Whitehouse. Anyway, somatics is this bigger, broader space which uses the body and movement to investigate, explore, develop knowledge, basically. So in this exercise, BMC, that I sort of am borrowing from as my starting point, we work with something they're calling the weight of consciousness. And this is looking at, it's an exploration of the anatomy of the body. It's a experiential anatomy type exercise, which is another bigger genre outside body-mind centering. And so here I want to invite you to hold something that has some weight and just feel how your body becomes conscious of that, basically, or how you become conscious of that. So hold, say, a book in one of your hands, and then remove the book and feel how your body is aware of, how it affects that sensation, that memory, that consciousness of weight. And keep putting the book on, taking the book off. Try with different weights, maybe a stone or something lighter, or a shoe or a water bottle. But just try different weights. Try with your other hand and notice how your body feels and is conscious of that weight. And then notice how you are conscious of the weight of things in the room, the things you see, and how you already have a sense, you've sort of accumulated a knowledge around those weights. And as we're playing, we can also see how that sensation of having held something heavy in our hand changes the way our hand can move and our arm can move, perhaps, or leg, whatever you have, or whatever you wish to work with. And then maybe we can start to consider how the weight of our own body is felt and how we are conscious of that. So say if we put our hand on our leg and then remove that, or our leg on a leg, or we put our chest on our knees, on our lap, and remove it. But then also just the sense of the structure and how we feel that. So this is very similar to what we did at the beginning. with feeling that consciousness of weight. And I hope you're following along and doing this whilst I'm talking. But here we're starting to also imagine and think about how the nervous system and our cognitive system, how our perception of objects and the world around us also has a quality of weight. It has a memory or a sensation of weight. Even when we lean against the wall, as we were doing in the sort of contact impro-like section of this session, we feel our weight and the weight of gravity against the wall. But we also in a way feel the weight of the wall against us. So play with that, trying different weights, trying different things. Hopefully you're in an environment where you feel confident just to play and to do what you like. And then we will leave it there. We have looked at different types of weight, how we can move with weight, how it creates motion, how we're always dealing with gravity. And now we are just starting to include this consciousness and other ways of considering weight and how that might affect our dancing. And we also briefly touched on some larger references, techniques where they centralize the weight of the body, and in like contact impro or release technique. And you can continue practicing with this weight of consciousness for as long as you want after this session has ended. And then take some time perhaps also to just note down anything that you remember that feels relevant, like we have done in the other sessions, just for yourself. And I look forward to seeing you again, and I thank you for being here. Hi, thanks for listening. If you can support the podcast, please go to paypal.me/dancepeter. I'm just looking for a little bit of funding to help support the cost of the hosting. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much.